The photographs in the hallway still smelled faintly of smoke. They hung crooked in their frames, warped from heat. Survivors of a night no one talked about anymore. The rebuilt McAllister house stood like a wax replica of what once was. Too clean, too symmetrical, as if pretending nothing had ever happened. But Kevin remembered. Every inch of that night was carved behind his eyes, stitched into his skin like the ghost of a wound that refused to close. Therapists called it trauma. Social workers called it a miracle. The town called it a tragedy, and then, when it made them uncomfortable, they called it old news. He was 12 now. Taller, quieter. Not the boy who screamed when he was left behind, or laughed when burglars fell on toy cars. He rarely laughed anymore. He barely spoke except to one man. Old Man Marley had become his shadow, his lifeline. The only person who didn't look at Kevin like he was something broken. Marley had taken him in unofficially, pending paperwork and background checks, even though Kevin had begged to stay with him every night since the fire. They would sit in Marley's kitchen, the old one with yellow cabinets and a tin of dry cookies on the shelf, and talk about the things people didn't like to hear. Grief, ghosts, knives. On this particular morning, the air was colder than usual, the kind of cold that sunk into the bones before the skin noticed. Kevin sat on Marley's porch steps, hoodie drawn tight, his fingers wrapped around a cup of tea he wouldn't drink. Inside, Marley was preparing to meet with the lawyer about the adoption. Everything was almost finalized. Just a few more weeks, he had said. Then Kevin could stay for good. Marley had smiled when he said it. Kevin didn't. He didn't trust almost. That afternoon, Marley left the lawyer's office around sunset. The streets were already starting to fill with orange light and early decorations, paper bats in windows, plastic pumpkins on porches, laughter in the distance. He took a shortcut through a narrow alley beside the church. Leaves crunched under his boots. A small cross hung from his neck, tapping gently against his chest. Halfway down the alley, he paused. A feeling. Cold breath on warm skin. That ancient sensation of being watched. "Hello?" Marley called, his voice worn but firm. Nothing but wind and a flapping flyer for a Halloween carnival. He continued walking. A cat darted from a trash can. He muttered to himself, cursed the shadows. Then he reached his front door, unlocked it, stepped inside and flicked on the light. It didn't come on. The porch bulb behind him flickered. Once. Twice. Then it died. He turned back toward the window, and in the dark glass he saw the faintest reflection of white, a pale oval, a shape, then nothing. Inside, the floorboards creaked like bones. He moved carefully, instinct guiding him now. He reached for the drawer where he kept the old baseball bat, the one he used to use in the garage. His fingers wrapped around the wood, just as the hallway behind him went completely black. No sound, just the cold. Then the click of a door shutting. He spun, but there was no one there. "Who's there?" he asked, voice low. From the living room, a soft scuff. He stepped forward. His breath was shallow. Every part of him knew. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a burglar. It was him. The bat trembled in his hands. He raised it, eyes wide, heart trying to escape his ribs. Then the mirror beside the fireplace shattered. A hand. A mask. The shape. He screamed. The bat swung. The room exploded into motion. Outside, a neighbor turned up their television to drown out the noise. Inside, the hallway filled with blood. Later, the only light in the house came from a single jack-o'-lantern, flickering beside a headless body, slumped against the wall. Carved into the pumpkin's face was not a smile, but A scream. The town called it healing. Kevin called it pretending. They had rebuilt the street, filled the scar in the earth where his house once stood, painted over the blood with fresh asphalt and seasonal cheer. But he remembered. He always remembered. A year to the night. The sky was gray, bloated with storm clouds, threatening rain that hadn't yet come. Kids ran through the neighborhood in superhero capes and inflatable pumpkins, dragging pillowcases across driveways and ring-lit porches. Music played, laughter echoed. Behind every mask was a lie, and Kevin McAllister walked through it like a ghost. He wasn't wearing a costume, just a black hoodie, jeans, and the same expression he'd worn since the fire. Half empty, watching, waiting. He had left the Foster house after dinner claiming he was going trick-or-treating. No one argued. They never did any more. People were afraid of him, not for what he did, but for what he had survived. His feet moved automatically, dragging him past the rebuilt McAllister house without looking up. A couple lived there now. No kids. Porch decorated too cleanly, too tastefully, like a catalog page trying too hard to prove everything was fine. But nothing was fine. The world had swallowed the fire and moved on. Kevin crossed the street, leaves stuck to his shoes. He tugged his hoodie tighter, ears filled with the whisper of wind through bare branches. His hand never left his pocket, where the small folding knife Marley had given him still rested. A relic, a warning, and then he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like a break in the noise, a pressure. Like the world exhaled, his head turned, slowly, mechanically, like he already knew. Across the street, behind a group of laughing kids in plastic skull masks, and flashing shoes, he saw him, standing perfectly still. No movement, no sound. The same expressionless white mask, dark jumpsuit, one hand at his side, the other loose, open, as if waiting to be given something, or to take it. Kevin froze. The crowd moved around him unbothered. Music blared from a speaker down the block. Someone shouted a joke. But it all faded beneath the sound in Kevin's head. The high-pitched scream of memory. Fire. Screeching wood. His mother's necklace in the rubble. Buzz's voice echoing like static. Marley's hand, warm then cold, holding his shoulder one last time. And then, the shape tilted its head. Kevin's scream cracked the air like lightning. High and sharp and wrong. The kind of scream no child makes unless something inside them shatters. The crowd turned. A few kids laughed nervously. Parents murmured. Someone said, "It's just a costume, sweetheart." But Kevin was already running. Blood pounding, vision tunneling. He didn't see anyone laughing. He didn't see the fake Michael Myers costume standing frozen beside the real one. He just ran. He ran to the only place that ever felt safe, Marley's house. The porch was dark, door slightly ajar. Something was wrong. He pushed it open. Marley, no answer. The air inside was too still, heavy, like the house was holding its breath. Kevin stepped in, the floorboard under his foot creaking once, then he saw it. The living room had been rearranged, carefully, ritualistically. The furniture was pushed to the walls. Candles burned low. In the center of the room, a chair, an old wooden rocker, faced the window. A figure slumped in it. Kevin stepped forward, slowly. His feet didn't want to obey, but something deeper pulled him on. Marley. He circled the chair. And then the scream inside him died. Old man Marley sat upright, mouth open, eyes gone. His head was twisted clean around, his body roped to the chair with strings of Christmas lights. A candy cane was shoved through one palm, crucifix style, and on the window behind him, written in blood, "Traps won't save you this time." Kevin collapsed backward, eyes wide, the air gone from his lungs. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He stood, slowly, mechanically, and walked to the back closet. Inside, Marley's tools were still kept: rusted pliers, saws, rope, a blowtorch. Kevin's hands moved like he was sleepwalking. He pulled out a crate of nails, a box of fireworks, a hammer, his face blank, his breath silent. The mask wasn't on Michael's face anymore. It was inside Kevin's chest, cold, tight, pressed to bone. Outside, the rain finally began to fall. Rain hammered the roof in broken rhythms, like fists pounding from the sky. Kevin moved through the old house with silent purpose, his shadow stitched to the walls by candlelight. Marley's body still sat in the chair, rigid and grotesque, the white bulbs of the Christmas lights blinking mockingly around his limbs. Kevin hadn't touched him. Couldn't. He simply drew the curtains closed and whispered a quiet apology. Then he went to work. The house had already been halfway dead before the night began. Ancient wallpaper peeling like flayed skin, floorboards groaning beneath forgotten weight. But Kevin understood old things. He knew how to wake up what had once been useful. He emptied drawers, flipped over furniture, broke apart lamps for wiring. He unscrewed the oven knobs and ran lines of string across stairwells. At one point, he found a bottle of lighter fluid in Marley's garage and his hands stopped shaking. He was home again. Only this time, the traps weren't games. There were no marbles, no paint cans, no feathers, no gags. These were kill switches, snares, things that bled. The rain soaked the windows until the street outside was nothing but water and shadow. In the living room, Kevin wired a trip line across the base of the door. Attached to it, a bundle of nails rigged to explode from the kitchen's rolling pin like shrapnel. Above the stairwell, a loose board suspended with tension wire, its jagged edge sharpened to a brutal wedge. The hallway floor was smeared with motor oil, the kind Marley kept for the snowblower. A single spark would turn it into glass. In the back room, Kevin built a kind of altar, not to worship, but to remind. He placed Buzz's old hockey stick beside Marley's cane. He set a cracked family photo in the center. All of them, long before the fire, long before the screaming. He sat before it for a moment, breathing through his teeth. Then he lit the first fuse. Somewhere outside the house, a twig cracked. Kevin stood. His hand slipped into his jacket, fingers curling around the knife. He didn't speak, didn't pray, just waited. A gust of wind slammed the front door open. The trip line snapped. The nail bomb erupted into the foyer like a flashbang. A spray of iron and fire. Kevin flinched, crouching behind the hallway wall. But when the smoke cleared, nothing. The doorway stood empty, no body, no blood. Then, from the back of the house, glass shattered. The kitchen. He's already inside. Kevin moved, fast. The traps weren't just defenses, they were alarms, signals. Each one bought him time. But time was burning. The kitchen was dark when he entered. Lights slashed out, only the dim glow of the stove clock blinking 9:41 p.m. He stepped carefully, his shoes skimming over the tile. There was blood now, drops, small but fresh, trailing toward the pantry. He opened the door, empty. Then the refrigerator behind him shifted, just slightly. Kevin spun, knife raised. But it wasn't Michael. It was Kevin's own reflection, warped in the silver surface, pale and wide-eyed, hood soaked to the scalp. For a second, he didn't recognize himself. Then the hallway floor groaned. He's upstairs. Kevin bolted. He hit the landing and reached the top just in time to see a dark figure vanish down the hallway toward Marley's bedroom. Not running, walking, always walking. That was the terror of him. The deliberate slowness, like gravity with a mask. Kevin followed. The oil trap was next. He'd smeared it across the floor between the bathroom and bedroom. If Michael stepped into it, he'd slide straight into a wired bed frame strung with broken bulbs. But Michael didn't fall. Kevin watched, breathless, as the tall figure stepped directly over the oil. He remembered. He's learning. Kevin backed away. Then, with impossible speed, Michael lunged. The hallway exploded into motion. Kevin screamed, ducked, swung the knife, caught flesh. Michael hissed through his mask, but didn't stop. His hand closed around Kevin's shoulder and slammed him into the wall. The world tilted. Kevin stabbed blindly, once, twice, 3 times, until Michael dropped him. He crawled into the attic stairwell, slammed the hatch shut, and dropped a metal bar across it. Breathing like an animal, blood on his hands, rain on the roof, thunder cracked. He looked around, nothing left. No more tricks, no more traps. Just him, and the sound of footsteps on the stairs, slow, relentless. The attic door creaked open. The metal bar groaned, then snapped. Michael rose through the opening like a shadow from hell. Kevin raised the knife, but Michael didn't strike. He just stared. Kevin's hands shook, and then the floor collapsed. Fire. The gas line Kevin had rigged earlier, the failsafe, sparked behind the wall. Flames erupted, swallowing the side of the attic. Wood splintered. The roof buckled. Kevin was thrown backward through a hole in the wall, down into the gutter, and then, with a sickening crack, onto the lawn below. His vision went white, then black, then rain. He rolled onto his side, blood leaking from his mouth. Smoke curled above him. Sirens in the distance. People shouting. But none of them mattered, because across the yard, standing perfectly still among the firelit ruin, Michael stepped out of the flames. Still alive. Still coming. Kevin crawled, one hand, then another. He didn't look back. The rain came down in sheets now, thick and mean, like the sky was trying to drown the world. Kevin limped through the storm, each step a bolt of pain up his leg, blood warm against his skin, but washed away before it could dry. His hoodie hung off one shoulder, soaked to the bone, clinging to him like regret. Behind him, the McAllister block burned. Again, orange flames reflected in puddles and shattered glass, sirens screaming toward a home that couldn't be saved. He didn't look back. Kevin's legs carried him forward on instinct, down side streets, across vacant lots, past rusted swing sets, and deflated Halloween inflatables. His shoes slapped through puddles, bones rattling with every breath. He knew where he was going before he ever saw it. The old school. St. Agatha's Catholic School for Boys. Closed for renovation 5 years ago. Boarded up, forgotten. But Kevin had once sat at those desks, thrown pencils at Buzz, watched the rain smear the chalkboard while the nuns read from dusty old Bibles. He pushed open the rusted side door and stepped inside. Silence. Water dripped through the holes in the ceiling, gathering in puddles on the cracked linoleum floors. The smell of mold, chalk dust, and cold metal filled his lungs. Desks still sat in rows, frozen in time. A few toppled like bodies in a forgotten war. Bibles rotted on shelves. The crucifix in the hallway hung sideways, its nails rusted. Kevin collapsed onto the floor and screamed, not in pain, not in fear, but in rage. A sound that came from somewhere lower than the lungs, deeper than the soul. It echoed through the hallways like a siren, the scream of a boy who had nothing left to lose. When he stood again, the boy was gone. Only Kevin remained. He moved like a surgeon. Desks overturned, shelves dragged, old chemistry kits broken open, powders and wires ripped from cracked cabinets. In the gymnasium, he found baseball bats, hockey sticks, a box of fireworks from some forgotten fundraiser. He set lines of fishing wire across the hallway floor. hung a school bell from the stairwell door to use as a motion signal. Every step was a blueprint. Every breath a countdown. Outside thunder rolled like distant drums, and somewhere in that storm, he was coming. Michael Myers walked without urgency. His mask gleamed wet under lightning. Smoke still curled from his jumpsuit. Blood dripped from his fingers. Every street he passed grew quieter, the wind bowing to his presence. When he reached the edge of the school grounds, he stopped for only a moment, then kept walking. Inside, Kevin waited in the main hallway, breathing through his teeth, crouched behind a toppled teacher's desk. The air buzzed with anticipation. Every nerve pulled tight. Then he heard it. The bell. He's inside. Kevin pressed the detonator. The first trap ignited in the east wing, a stack of fireworks buried inside an overturned locker. They exploded with a scream of sparks and heat, bathing the hallway in red light. Michael walked through it like smoke. Next, the stairwell. Kevin had coated the steps in wax, tied fishing wire to the rail, then soaked the bottom step in kerosene. Michael hit it, slid, crashed. Kevin dropped a lit match from the top. The staircase erupted. Michael fell into fire. Kevin waited. 1 second, 2, 3. Then the flames parted and the shape rose again. Burned, bleeding, but still walking. Kevin turned and ran, through the classrooms, past the nurse's office, down the hall lined with class photos. 3rd grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten. He stopped. The photo, him, smiling, teeth missing, eyes wide. Buzz behind him, smirking. His mother holding the corner of the frame. A sob caught in his throat. The glass shattered. Michael's hand had struck through the wall. Kevin screamed and ran again, this time toward the auditorium. His last trap. The gymnasium doors loomed ahead, chained open just wide enough for him to squeeze through. He slid across the wet floor, made it behind the bleachers, and grabbed the rope hanging from the rafters. Michael followed. He stepped into the gym, and that's when Kevin pulled the rope. Above him, the crucifix from the hallway, heavy, ancient metal, swung down from the ceiling on a wire rig. It struck Michael full in the chest, impaling him against the hardwood floor with a sickening crunch. Blood spread beneath him in a growing pool, mixing with rainwater from the leaking roof. Silence. Kevin fell to his knees, chest heaving, fingers trembling. Then he stood, walked to the body, looked down. Michael's mask stared back up at him, blank, unmoving. Kevin raised the knife and stabbed him, again and again and again, until the blood wasn't just his enemy's but his own, smeared across his hands-face hoodie, the knife slipping from his fingers as his body collapsed beside the monster. Rain pounded through the broken roof, lightning flashed, and in that moment, lying beside the man who had taken everything, Kevin finally felt nothing. Not victory, not closure, just nothing. By morning, the school was empty again. Police found nothing but blood, fire damage, and a single folded paper on the teacher's desk. Kevin's drawing, a house, burning, and beside it, a figure, smaller than the flames, holding a trap, waiting, watching. Outside on the edge of the rooftop, a figure stood in the rain, small, hooded, a duffel bag over one shoulder. He didn't look back. He just walked into the storm, into whatever came next. Snow drifted through the air like ash, soft and quiet, muffling the sounds of the city beneath it. Christmas lights blinked across rooftops, warm and inviting. Window displays glowed red and green. Somewhere, a saxophone version of Let It Snow played from a diner's speaker with warped vinyl crackle. 2 figures trudged along the sidewalk, wrapped in overstuffed coats. "Remind me again why we're doing this, Harry," Marv groaned, dragging a battered red toolbox behind him. Because parole says we need employment, and I'm not getting locked up again for skipping another meeting, Harry snapped, his nose red and eyes narrow under a knit cap. They stopped outside a church, the lights glowing golden in the stained glass windows. Harry glanced at a wrinkled flyer. Volunteers needed repairs for Christmas pageant. I hate Christmas, he muttered. You hate everything, Marv replied. They stood in silence for a moment, their breath steaming in the cold. A bell rang softly from the church tower. I still think we should have just robbed the gas station and split town. Harry gave him a look. Yeah, 'cause that worked out great last time. Marv opened the toolbox. I think the screwdriver's froze into the... A crunch interrupted them. Not from the snow, from across the street. Both turned slowly. A shape stood at the end of the alley, not moving, just watching. The falling snow clung to the dark blue coveralls. A heavy, scorched jacket hung off one shoulder. The figure was tall, silent, its face obscured by the dark, except for the glint of a white mask, smooth and dead-eyed beneath the street lamp. Marv dropped the wrench. Harry whispered, "No. Freaking way." Neither of them moved. The figure tilted its head. The wind stopped. The church bells rang again. Then, the mask turned and disappeared into the alley without a sound. Gone. Like a ghost. Marv looked at Harry. Harry looked at Marv. You saw that, right? I'm never fixing a nativity scene again. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then both turned, picked up their tools, and walked away, faster than they meant to, not speaking again until they were 3 blocks out of sight. Behind them, the snow kept falling, and the shape kept walking.